Hello and welcome to Candice Recommends with myself, Candice Mama. Today is such a special episode because my guest today is someone I admire, I look up to, and who I'm 100% sure will spark you to change something in your immediate environment as well as in the world. It is Constantinides, and she is a climate activist, a humanitarian, and is doing extraordinary work in the Western Sahara. Please join us in this conversation, and before we get started, I'd love to wish you guys a happy Africa Day and a very blessed Eid Mubarak to our Muslim family and friends across the world. But without further ado, here's my good friend, Constantinides.
Yay!
You made it.
I made it.
I know, Wi-Fi is one of those things. It's either your best friend or your worst enemy.
It's so great to see you.
So good to see you. You're actually one of those people. Whenever I cross paths with anyone who's in the humanitarian field or who works in any organizations, you're one of the first people who come up. They're like, "Have you met Catherine?" And I'm like, virtually.
We're waiting for the end of lockdown, right?
Exactly. We should have known each other so long ago, but I think everything happens in perfect timing, right? But I was just saying before you joined the call, just wishing everyone a happy Africa Day and, a blessed Eid Mubarak to our Muslim friends and family that are watching from across the world. And you do so much incredible work. And you know what I want to do? I want to do a very rapid fire round with you before we go into the depths of your work. So are you ready? We're going to do rapid fire and then you just have to go with it, girl. Go with it.
Okay.
Are you ready? Okay. Describe Catherine in 3 words.
Brave, courageous, crazy.
Oh, I love that. What's your song of the moment?
I can't tell you. I'm the worst with song titles and song names. It's like that and movies are 2 things I can't do.
Feel like hum along.
That one, yeah.
What's your favorite book of all
time? It would probably have to be Long Walk to Freedom.
Oh, that's a great book. That's a great book.
And the original one, the really thick one.
Okay. I like the less thick one. But good for you. What's the happiest thing in your life right now?
Sorry, what is
What's the happiest thing in your life right now?
Oh, my child. My child is, Matthew is the center of my universe. He's the sunshine on the darkest day. He's the rainbow after the storm. He's everything. Yeah.
Okay, the world needs more
love and kindness.
I couldn't agree more. And then last but not least, what does Africa Day mean to you?
Africa Day, for me, more than a celebration, is a reminder of how much work we still have to do. We can never be truly free until everybody is free. And I think that for me, this is an important day to highlight what we need to do as Africans, what things we need to take cognizance of, and what it is that we can do in our daily lives where we are. Because I think people think Africa and they think of this grand big place that they can't connect to. Yet we're part of that grand big place. And we need to understand our continent much better.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So now that actually leads me perfectly into the work you do. But before just finding out about you, both a climate activist and a humanitarian. So what led you to this point? What led you to thinking something needs to change and I want to be a part of changing it?
I think from growing up, I grew up and we had very little, but this garden that we had and we grew up in was the entire world to us. And my dad really gave us a responsibility that world, or the reflection of that garden, was the world. And we had a responsibility to look after it. And so that innate responsibility to look after the world around us was really put inside of us from a very young age. And by the same token, seeing my mom and my dad do humanitarian kind of work from a very young age was the way that we lived. It wasn't something that they did in their spare time. It wasn't something that they did when there was an extra weekend here or there. It was how they lived. And so seeing that spirit of service to others is really just how me and my sister, and then later on my brother, it's the kind of life we only knew. That was how you live. You live to serve other people. And it wasn't something that sort of clicked or was, oh, one day I'd like to be this. It was really a very organic journey, but it really came from the kind of upbringing and the home that we came from.
Oh, I love that. And so where did your journey begin in this field? Because I know you were Miss Earth, but was that the beginning? Was that like the pinnacle of now I'm doing this?
I think it began a little bit before that. So when I was at school, roped in all my friends, and that's what we did. You know, we would do whatever sports or extramurals we had to do, and then we would frustrate them to death because we would like take them to go and do other stuff with us. And I say we because my sister and I are very close, and we did a lot of stuff, especially during high school together. And I think that the work really started to really cement itself into something that was like structured. So during, you know, being at school, these were the kinds of things that we would do. These are the kinds of things we would think about. And it kind of grew from there. And Miss Earth obviously was a really important part of my journey, an incredible platform, and one which I wanted to really transform into something that would become a leadership program that I would have wanted to be a part of. And so we really transformed what Miss Earth was internationally to what we then developed here in South Africa. And that was a really long time ago. And you look at the journey and you look back at the journey and you think, wow, you know, it's really for me to be able to walk a path where you are able to touch lives of other people, and in turn those lives go out to touch other people's lives. I think that is incremental change that we need. You asked me about what I think the world needs. I definitely think the world, you know, love and kindness are absolute, but we also need a lot more respect. And I think respect is something that we don't see enough of. I don't know if it is the age of social media and you know, everyone is allowed an opinion, but we then forget that it doesn't matter what somebody else's opinion is. Somehow we lost that golden thread of respect, and we've got to respect each other enough to agree to disagree, or to agree to see things differently, but to still work from a fundamental base of respect.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you. And it leads me to your TED talk that you recently did, which was every person should be an active citizen. Why do you believe that is?
I think that we, specifically here in South Africa, we have the most remarkable country in the world. And unfortunately, South Africans don't always see it that way, because sometimes we've just never been on the outside looking back in. And I'm privileged to have been to so many parts of the world, as I know you have traveled a lot as well. And you see South Africa from an outside perspective. You see the way the world works in other countries. And I think that the most important thing is that we forget that we are a very young and fragile democracy. We have not walked a 200-year journey yet. And so our history is still so fresh and so young, but it requires a fundamental shift in thinking where we actually understand it's not a bottom-down approach from a government. It's really about the top-down approach, but it's a bottom-up approach where the citizens are part of what it is that we build this country to be. And I think that we all have a responsibility. Every single day, we should be getting up and we should ask ourselves if it is as amazing, and if I had the talent, I would, to dance and to share that and to do that in such a positive way. How many of us use our platforms to impact in positive ways? How many of us use our platforms to share happiness? These are they sound so easy, they sound so simple, they sound so basic that, like, why would you even think about that? But we're not conscious enough and deliberate enough in being active citizens. Wow. And I would really, really challenge people to say, if you say you're an active citizen, what does that mean to you? Because unfortunately, not enough South Africans know what it means to be an active citizen that is engaging in building our country.
Oh, wow. And I couldn't agree more with you. And I love how you broke it down in terms of saying you just need to spread more positivity, more light, right? Because I think anytime people think of being an active citizen or having to stand up and have a voice, they think of it in the most, you know, out there kind of way. They want to know, I need to go out and do all these things, and I don't have the strength or capabilities or resources. But what you're saying is so correct, that it's just about you need to use your platform, whether you're being followed by 5 people, whether it's in your household, neighborhood, to be a decent human being, to be a respectful human being, to be a kind human being. And speaking on those principles, you do a lot of work in the Western Sahara, which I want to get more in depth with and educate people on what exactly you're doing over there. But it's not an easy journey for you. And I've seen, as I was researching and I was, looking at interviews you've done, how opposition you get. So I want to know, how do you continue to keep going in a line of work that may look glamorous because you've got these Instagram followers and you post these beautiful pictures and we see these beautiful kids who admire you, so grateful for you. But at the same time, you've got a lot of opposition. You've got a lot of people who are against what you stand for. And so how do you navigate that, keep your strength, stay balanced, and continue to do the work you do?
It is tough. And I really appreciate that question, because I think so often people don't see, they see what they see. And we live in a world of perception. And so I may share a photo and your perception is one, that this is amazing, I want to do exactly what you do. And I often get people sending messages and saying, oh, I really want to do what you're doing, how do I do it? And it's really a difficult thing, because I don't know how to answer that. The work that I do takes deep courage, because I've got to be courageous in the things that I believe in, and I really have to have a very strong conviction to continue doing the work I do because of that opposition. And unfortunately, that opposition isn't, a general group of haters who, everyone's going to have haters. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have people who will look at your page or follow you on Twitter or whatever, just because they actually just dislike everything you stand for, because they want it, or whatever it might be. But the kind of opposition I have to constantly frame is that I'm standing against an entire government and a regime, and it is very difficult because the threats are real, the security issues are real. I have gone to faraway countries, like I've gone to Spain or I've gone to France, and I will be followed by an agent from Morocco because you're on a list where they don't want you to be saying the things you say. I go to Geneva and I will be listed on a program for the day. And as you walk into the UN, you'll pick up that program. So you'll find somebody's name. And because my name is there, they will send, their mercenaries to come to that room to antagonize me, to frustrate me, to upset me, to bribe me. These are things that are real. But the Moroccan regime has not given up on all of these tactics. These are the things they constantly do because they fear the truth. And what keeps me going are those magnificent children I get to call mine. Those are the children in the camps, the Sahrawis that have embraced me in a way that I could never have imagined possible, but more so because I've lived a truth and I've lived in those camps and I know what is going on. And so nobody has had to tell me the truth that I share. No one has had to give me documents to read or has spoken to me about something. I went there and I lived that truth and I understand it fundamentally. And every time I go back to those camps, or I'm with Sahrawi women who, for example, have been tortured for 10 or 12 or 15 years by a regime that is signatory to the anti-torture declaration of the United Nations, it boggles my brain. I cannot sit still and not do what I do. And I have to keep fighting, as hard as it sometimes is. I traveled to the camps earlier this year, and I shared my journey with somebody, and they said to me, am I crazy? Like, why on earth would I travel such a far distance to go to the middle of nowhere, to stay in a refugee camp, to work with a people that are not my people? And I said, well, firstly, they are my people. I choose them and they choose me. Secondly, what a privilege for me to have a second place to call home. But thirdly, when you go to bed at night, you go to bed with your conscience. How on earth could I go to bed knowing what I know and do nothing? There are stories that women have shared with me of their time in Moroccan jails. There are stories they've shared with me of the torture that they have gone through. And what is incredible, sometimes I have to pinch myself because I can't believe it's real. For example, when I go to Geneva to the Human Rights Commission, Sahrawi women will come to see me. They will want to share their stories with me. They may travel from different parts of Europe because they know I'm currently in Geneva. And they share their stories with me so that I will share them with the world. So they give me this most sacred thing, which is their story. And somebody who is such a renowned author, such as yourself, will understand to carry someone else's story is something, I don't have words for it. But when they share with you the deepest pains and wounds of their soul, and they give it to you and say, take this and share it with the world, tell them what is going on. How can I not do what I do? So I have to live with the fear, but I have to live with the understanding. I have to be braver than that fear, because there's an entire people that have put a responsibility on my shoulders to take their story to the world and to not be silenced by the Moroccan regime that has continued to perpetuate a painful, painful reality for an entire nation of people. 45 years later, and the world has started to forget the Sahrawi people.
Wow. And I just want to take a moment to just honor you, because, I mean, as you were speaking, my skin, you know, I've got like tingles, I'm on the verge of crying, just, you know, because I do believe that, you know, it takes a special kind of self-sacrifice in order to do this kind of work. You know, you forsake a very, I don't want to say ordinary, but a very normal life that for most people we take for granted. It's like, oh, wow, you know, I get to do these things on a daily basis. But I think it is so important to highlight how much opposition, how much fear, how much, you know, these people need to do it, how brave you are to continuously stand, you know, fight in the face of opposition. It's just, you know, I have to honor you in this moment. So thank you. So for the people who do not know what is currently happening in the Western Sahara, how would you explain it in a way that all of us can really have a take home and we can sit with it and really analyze it?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. It's important to understand. Firstly, Western Sahara is a country in North Africa. It is directly south of Morocco and directly north of Mauritania. So it's wedged between these two countries. And what has happened is Western Sahara is right along the coastline. And so it has a fishing coast that happens to be very, very rich in fish and what is able to be pulled from the ocean from an economic perspective. It also happens to be exceptionally rich in phosphates. Now, phosphates are the foundation of any another word has escaped me. When you're doing all kinds of agricultural based activity and industry require phosphates to be used in the ground, etc., etc. The Western Sahara has the greatest source of phosphates. And so the small country wedged between two big countries has got all of these resources. But unfortunately, they're a very small population, an incredible population that prior to 1975, they were colonized by the Spanish, and Spain's occupation ended in 1975. They signed an accord, or, you know, just a document with Morocco and Mauritania. It's illegal. They should not have been able to sign it, but they did. And as the occupying power, they said, well, we've decided we're going to now leave, but we'll give you access to go in. So as we exit, you're welcome to take in, you know, enter into that land. And there were definitely trade agreements that happened to say, well, if you exit Western Sahara, if you enter Western Sahara and you're trading the phosphates, you're trading the fish, etc., we want a certain percentage of that trade. So that would go back to Spain. A very good and very sweet deal for everyone involved. But in 1975, an actual war broke out. The Sahrawi people fought for their land, and Morocco invaded from the north, Mauritania from the south, and so the Sahrawi people were almost forced to either fight, give their life, or they would have had to exit. The only border that was open was the Algerian border. The Algerian border on the southwest side of Algeria was opened, and Algeria allowed for Sahrawi people to move in. There was a temporary refugee camp that was set up in 1975. But What happened was that this armed struggle lasted from 1975 all the way to 1991. It's a long, long time. People lost their lives. Families were divided. Some were still in the occupied territory. Others fled to the refugee camp. And by that stage, the United Nations, for the first time, called for a ceasefire. And they called for a ceasefire on one specific promise, and that was the promise of a referendum. And that referendum would take place within 6 months of the ceasefire. That was in 1991. This is the year 2020, and that referendum has never seen the light of day. Yes. Morocco has aggravated the United Nations process to call for that referendum. Every single time the referendum is put on the table, there are so many different kinds of tactics that they have used to ensure that this issue is just deferred and deferred and deferred. And what has happened is that that temporary refugee camp has become the only home to generations of children that have they've grown up in that camp, they were born in that camp. And children such as Mohammed, who is a little baby, Mohammed doesn't know a life outside of a refugee camp. He doesn't know what it means to live outside of that. And what is really sad is that Morocco has kept a black curtain over Western Sahara. And I say this because myself, 10 years ago, if you asked me where Western Sahara was, I wouldn't know what you're talking about. As a progressive country, South Africa, from a continental perspective, you think we know so much about our continent. But why do we not know about Western Sahara? Why is it not part of our continental history? We, as a country, depended so much on our continent. Countries such as Zambia, Nigeria. I can go through lists of the countries and what they did for us during the darkest day of our history. But where are we now when we're in such a strong position? And there is still a country that is being colonized on our continent. And so the basic thing that I would want to say, I know that's a lot of information, but as basic as it is, Morocco illegally occupies another African country. They've kept a black curtain, not allowed media, journalists, activists into that territory. Once you go into that territory, you'll be deported, you will be put into jail. And so they've managed to really, really keep a hold on illegally trading the resources of that region. They literally raped the land of the resources that should have been the resources left for the people of Western Sahara to build an economy from. And they've done it in such a way because they're starting to get scared that this referendum may now take place 45 years later. They're starting to deplete the resources in a way that is so unsustainable, there will be nothing left in the next few years. Not for them, not for the Sahrawi. And the people are now divided. Some of the families are divided by half of them being in the refugee camps and the other half still being in Western Sahara in the occupied territory. And during the period of time from 1975 to now, Morocco built a wall. This wall is the second longest wall in the world. It is here on our continent, second only to the Great Wall of China. And it divides the Sahrawi people physically. It's 4 layers. And what is worse than this wall? It is known as the Wall of Shame. The berm can be seen from space. It is an unbelievable thing that lives here on our continent. And it's known as the Wall of Shame because not only was it okay to divide the Sahrawi people, but more so, unfortunately, the Moroccans put 7 to 10 million landmines on either side of this wall. And those landmines remain active in the ground in the Sahara. And the sickening thing is that landmines don't kill people. Unfortunately, there are casualties, but they maim people. So imagine living firstly as a refugee, being hit by a landmine and having to live without your limbs, be it an arm, be it your sight, your ears, part of your face, losing your legs. And so early last year, I did something which I would never have thought I would do, but I did it because it has been a privilege to work with those affected by landmines who continue to fight and to do such great work for others, even though they have lost their limbs. So I work with Aziz Haidar, who is the founder of the Sahrawi Commission for Victims of Landmines. And at the age of 21, as an activist, he lost both his legs and one of his arms in a landmine explosion. The person he was in the car with lost their life, but Aziz continues to fight and to do all he can to highlight the cause. And so last year, I ran the Sahara Marathon through the Sahara Desert to highlight the cause of these landmines. Because unfortunately, landmines are not something we even talk about here in South Africa. And it's not something that many parts of the world even know about. But to see a landmine and to engage with the victims of the landmines is something else. And so what I would really encourage people to do is to do your homework. Find out what Western Sahara is. Encourage people not to forget. But more so, let us not travel to Morocco. Let us not spend our money with a country that is continually abusing the human rights of a people who have been forgotten. We think of Morocco from a travel destination perspective. If you look across Instagram and you look at North African travel countries, Morocco is the place. Yeah. Because it's got this idyllic, it's incredible. And we would think that Morocco should be on our bucket list. That's a place we should go. But I would encourage people to not go to Morocco. Let us not travel to a country until it is given the freedom of the Sahrawi self-determination to them, for them to decide for themselves. Morocco, as I mentioned earlier, is also signatory to the Anti-Torture Declaration under the United Nations. Yet, the torture that they, to this day, inflict on the Sahrawi people, if they claim to be Sahrawi, if they talk with their Sahrawi accent, if they're dressed with their traditional melfa and go out in Western Sahara, they're beaten for the fun of being beaten. That is not the torture. But I spent some time with Algalia Jimmy, who is a remarkable, remarkable woman. And the story she shared with me of her torture, I couldn't sleep for weeks. But more so, what struck me was that the unbelievable spirit of the human being continues to fight through. If I were her, I would give up. I wouldn't want to live knowing what has been done to me, the way they've stripped people of their dignity. You know, there was another woman, she had to learn for 12 years to sleep standing up because they would not allow her to lie down to sleep. And every day when she woke up, they would hang her from her hair on a line, and then they would torture her. To this day, her hair doesn't grow. She has no hair. And that wasn't even the torture. But the way that they have ripped mothers from their children in their families' homes and taken them into jail on bogus charges, they've kept them there. The way that they beat the political prisoners, students, it's inhumane, and we can't keep quiet.
Wow. I mean, just that information alone, I feel like one of the people that really, of course, I follow your journey. So I've picked up bits and pieces, but to this level, to this depth, I could not even have imagined. And I don't think anyone watching, unless you are a part of the Western Sahara community, would have any access to this kind of, right? Because when we think of global politics or global issues, rarely does the Western Sahara come up. I mean, I've attended so many conversations, and the Western Sahara is really represented. So for me, it's just so educational. And now I'm sitting here thinking, how do we as citizens of South Africa, firstly, where do we get resources to learn more about the Western Sahara? And then secondly, what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we become allies and worthy allies to the Western Sahara people?
I think it's really important to understand that a lot of the literature that is available online, unfortunately, has always traditionally been in Spanish, Arabic, and French. I've tried to write as much as I can in English, and it's a a journey. I want to be able to publish a lot more in English, but I really would encourage anyone who's listening to go online and do homework. Search the Western Sahara. Read some of the propaganda that does exist online, and you will start to be able to pick up what is propaganda and what is actual truth. You will be able to find official statements from the South African government. The South African government stands firm on the liberation of Western Sahara, and so does the African Union. Unfortunately, for me, is a really big dog with no teeth. And they really have a lot to say, but they have not actioned what they should have. Almost 3 years ago, Morocco was allowed back into the African Union, and they were allowed back into the African Union on no terms and conditions. They left more than 20, 30 years ago when it was still the OAU, because Western Sahara was a recognized founding member. And so when you think of all these things and you realize that we're trading on what we have forgotten the human value of the people, and instead we're looking at the economic benefit that we receive from Morocco, be it economic trade, bilateral relations. We need to start doing our own homework. I would encourage you, when you're speaking to people, connecting with people, ask people about Western Sahara. Tell them what you know. It may be one thing. Encourage people not to travel to Morocco. Let us try to be as conscious as possible that where we are, from where we sit, we're able to do small things. Just like I said, being an active citizen doesn't mean you have to go anywhere, doesn't mean you have to do anything fancy, have resources. You can sit where you are. You can go and you can, tomorrow morning, go and clean your pavement, because that's something that you can do to take pride in the community you come from. It's the same thing with Western Sahara. You can sit right where you are at home and you can share one positive tweet today that educates your community of 5 people, 10 people on Western Sahara. Let us start to encourage each other. Let us start to share positive information that really does move us forward. Western Sahara is a country in the Sahara Desert, and 2 years ago on this day, with the NGOs in the occupied territory and the NGOs in the in the refugee camps and the liberated territories, we launched a campaign called Stand in the Sand. And that is because the Sahrawi people have been left in the sand. And so often I will go to a country and I'll meet a Sahrawi and they say to me that they follow this hashtag and they see messages from people. And on a day that they really don't feel like getting up and fighting, they see that there are other people that are with them. And so I'd encourage you to send a message on Twitter and use the hashtag Stand in the Sand. And let us just unite in solidarity. Let us remember that our history depended on solidarity, international strength from not only countries outside of the continent, but most importantly, from our brothers and our sisters from across the continent. And we have so much work to do. And each of us can do small incremental things that have unbelievable opportunity to make a difference.
Wow. And I will pledge my support to the Western Sahara as we speak in this conversation, and I will do my part within, my circles, my networks, my communities to gather the correct resources to be able to be a part of helping and facilitating your movement in, liberating the Western Sahara people. And once again, I know I said it prior, but I have to salute you, and I'm just in awe of you, and I'm just sharing the space with you in this time. So what I will do is I'll put all the resources that I can find from your what you've already gathered in all the channels, and make sure that people have a starting point, a launching pad. And yeah, I hope that we live to see the day where our people are liberated, and that we have lent a voice to assisting that and making sure it happens. So moving away from that just slightly, I want to know, Catherine, with you, when writing your book, we need more Catherines in the world. We need people to have a copy of this book. When are you doing it?
Coming from you, that's a huge thing. So for many, many years, I've wanted to do a book. I have not yet done it, but that encouragement is, that's very encouraging. God willing, it's something I really want to do.
If you ever hit any bumps across your writing journey, I'm here.
I'm coming your way. I've got this video as proof. It's done.
You're like, I screen recorded this exact part.
There we go. Yeah. Screenshots. No, but thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your platform with me. Thank you for having the conversation with me. That for me, I don't have words to express what that means to me. You know, I am one simple individual, but I have made a promise to these children. In my lifetime, they will go home. In my lifetime, I will do everything I can to ensure that Western Sahara is liberated and that the Sahrawi people are given the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And on this Africa Day, I want to just say again, let us acknowledge this day, but not yet celebrate. Let us celebrate it when Western Sahara is a free and independent country. And let us give thought to the Sahrawi sons and daughters who are living in Moroccan jails on bogus charges, on nothing more than, unfortunately, their crime, according to Morocco, is being Sahrawi. And so let us think of them today. Let us think of the freedom fighters who continue to fight a really, really heroic fight, and one that we must walk with them to see through.
Absolutely. And I'm just so honored that this is a platform you chose to speak about it and share. And maybe I urge everyone, whether it be live, whether it be later on or anywhere down your journey, that you really do take a moment to visit, a resource really educates you. And at the very least, all of us can tweet, all of us have some sort of social media, whether you're speaking to 2 people or 25,000 or 200,000 people. I urge you to please use the hashtag stand in the sand and really just show people. I mean, I know many times we believe that, what's my little tweet going to do? What's my little encouragement going to do? But to people who are living in dire situations or going through something, that one tweet can travel and it can make a difference. That we're not living in a bubble, like in a little bubble. There is someone around the world thinking about me and who's speaking about me and who knows that I matter as a human being. And I think for me, that is exactly where I want to leave it. And I want to just ask you, what is your final thought for us? What is the one thing you want to leave us with on this episode?
I think my final thought would just really be, let us not only, I really want us to not only embrace the magnificence of this great continent we get to call home, but let us give thought to the many challenges. But more so, let us be conscious daily and let's be deliberate in making sure that we're part of the solution-driven messaging that goes out, solution-driven thinking, and let us engage in positivity. Let us engage in good stuff, because we have an incredible continent. And if we don't take ownership, if we don't write those stories, if we don't share them, somebody else will. So thank you so much for the privilege of speaking to you and being able to talk to you about my other people.
It's an absolute honor. And I want to leave you with a song from the late, great Miriam Makeba. And I hope you'll do an armchair dance with me. I'm not going to expect you to stand up. I did not bring you here to But I couldn't end this interview without some sort of a dance or some sort of music. So we have to do an armchair.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Spending this time with me. And thank you to everyone who watched this. We honor you and thank you for your presence in this conversation. Cheers. And I look forward to on this, because this is not there.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
I mean, what a conversation. I am still blown away by it, and please do go show your support for the Western Saharan people. I pledge my support and I stand in the sand, and I hope you will too. I have linked all the resources below, so please go and see for yourself what is currently happening in the Western Sahara. If you have enjoyed this video, please do like, subscribe and comment. I couldn't even say subscribe. And once again, happy Africa Day, and thank you so much for watching.